rather than me just kind of stumbling through it. So Dr. Cheryl Months, if you would share with us, please.
Good afternoon. I'm here just to tell you a little epiphany I had a couple of years ago. I got the opportunity to go to a new teacher center. And at the new teacher center, they were talking about different things that they could do for new teachers. And so I thought, what a wonderful idea to be able to come back and bring that to our district and maybe start something like that here. And so a couple of the teachers and I were talking, those teachers who went on this same trip, we were talking about different things. And so then I reflected back to when I first started teaching and how nervous I was and how backwards I was and how, thank God, that I had a good teacher like Mrs. John across the hall from me, who took me in and said, let me just help you a little bit, because at that point I was ready to quit. This is 39 years later. I'm still with Lawton Public Schools, but had it not been for somebody taking the time with me, I don't know that I would have still been there. So my purpose in coming back and asking permission if we could start a rookie club was to be able to give support to rookie teachers, to let them know we do care about you and we want you to stay. Why put that much time into education and then leave the education? So we begin our meetings each time with the good, bad, and the ugly. We want to know the good first, and then we want to know the bad things that maybe we can correct, and then we want to know what things that are looking ugly for you, but we can support those. For a couple of years, we had money to have a mentorship, and that worked out real well because the teachers were working with the rookie teachers, and that worked very well. Right now, the money is low and we don't have it, but we still have teachers who are willing to be mentors. But in this realm of just working with rookie teachers, we start off by looking at articles that have to do with what we're doing right now. We discuss those to stay abreast of what's going on. They have the new Tulsa instrument that they're going to go through. So some of the questions that maybe the principals don't have time for, I tried to keep up on those things myself so I can go over that with them. The main thing that they like about the Rookie Club is that they can talk about things that are happening to them without being evaluated on how they will do. And this is what I tell them. This is not Vegas, but whatever we say in here stays in here. Now, if a principal shows up, we don't talk about those kinds of things. We wait until the next meeting. But the whole thing is to make them feel comfortable enough that I don't want to see teachers who have gone through all those years of education to quit. And this year we had such a case that a teacher was so frustrated that she decided she didn't want to teach anymore, and she went back to being a waitress at one of the restaurants. And I don't ever want that to happen. I don't want teachers to ever feel like that they're not supported, and I don't want them to feel like that we're not there for them. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell them to call Mr. Smith, Mr. Davis, anybody who can help them. I try to find somebody to do. But the only reason the Rookie Club is here is thank you to the superintendent who allowed me to have it, and to the rest of the school board, and to the other administrators who had enough confidence that this would work. I think they're doing a wonderful job, and I try to do the best job I can to help them. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Months. As you can tell, there's tremendous concern by educators about educators, and what Mrs. Months is addressing is a critical thing. That our young teachers coming in need support, they need encouragement, they certainly need to figure out early on if this is a profession for their life, because it is not the same as it was when we went to school, and it is a different type of environment, and it changes rapidly, and I think everything we can do to keep them as close to the front of that, or out in front of that, as we can, and Mrs. Months does an excellent job of doing that. So thank you, Cheryl, very much.
Your report, Barry?
Under item 7A this evening, I would like to start with the consideration action regarding the FY12 district audit. We have Mary Johnson with us this evening to present to you. As you know, you received the audit under a separate cover, and you did that. That's simply because we didn't, in these budgetary trying times, we try to produce as little paper as we can whenever possible. So they actually produced this for us and we distributed it. But I would like to ask her, if she would, to give you an overview of the audit, be available to answer any questions. This can be a first reading, or it can be the evening that you make the acceptance of the audit as presented. Mary, welcome back, and thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll just make a few short comments, and then if there's some questions that you have, I'll be happy to answer those now or at a later time. If you'll look at page 1 of the bound document, that is the audit report that covers the financial statements. And within that report, we talked to you about what we audited and what standards we followed, and the fact that the financial information in the audit is actually management's responsibility, and our responsibility as auditors is to give you an opinion on the presentation of that information. And for the year ended 2012, in our opinion, the financial statements were were fairly stated in all material respects. So in layman's terms, that's an unqualified opinion. That report also refers to a second report at the back that we'll talk about in a minute, which is required because you are a Title 70 school under state statute and required to follow government auditing standards. And the very last paragraph talks about some of the other additional information that is included in the report and tells you the level of work that was performed on that. So if you have any questions as to the level of work, that first report tells you what the audit level work was. On page, very quickly, on page 14 and 15 is what we call the district-wide financial statements, and this is an overall recap of the district finance, not split into the budgetary constraints that you see on a monthly basis. And for the year ended June 30th, 2012, overall your net assets increased 6%, primarily to an increase in your investment in capital assets, net of the debt. That you'll see that on page 14, a recap both of the totals of your capital assets, and then you'll see the district debt detailed down under the liabilities, and then the net assets are what remains after that. On page 15 is the revenues and expenses split by program, and this particular statement is in an expense first format because the purpose is to show how your programs are funded. So at the very top you'll see the very first column are the expenses of the programs. Then after that you see the revenues that are directly related to those programs, and then the last column shows you whether those directly related revenues funded the programs. Then as you work your way down, the general revenues such as taxes, state aid, and federal aid that is provided to help the funding. Overall last year the revenues decreased 6%, expenses increased 3%, so we ended the year in a $4.5 million decrease in our restricted and unrestricted net assets. So that's basically those two statements. On page 16 and 17, you'll see the fund level financial statements, which gives you more of the shorter term finances of the districts related to the individual funds. And you'll note that if you look at the fund balance section, all of the resources at year end were either restricted, committed, or assigned. So we had no resources available at the end of 2012 that did not have a purpose of some type that was already committed for it. Within the report after that, you have more detailed information in the notes where you can find information about the debt, the totals on the capital assets, and some of that information that you may have questions about. At the very back of the report on pages, starting on page 54, is the report over internal control and compliance related to an audit of financial statements that's required by governmental auditing standards. The purpose of this report is to, as a part of the audit, we look at specific things on internal control and compliance with state laws and contracts, and any conditions that come to our attention as a part of that would be reported to you in this report, and we had no such conditions related to that work. Now, we don't give you an opinion on compliance or internal control, but that's a communication report to let you know that as a part of the audit we do look at that. After that report is the report that is required by the federal government related to OMB Circular A-133 funds, and it talks about the compliance. We do give you an opinion on the programs that we did audit, which if you want to know which programs those are, they are identified on the page 58. So we do give you an opinion that we did not find that you were in compliance in all material respects for those programs that we did audit during the year. And then there also is an internal control section related to federal programs that we do look at the internal controls over federal programs that we audit, and any conditions that we would have noted would be reported to you. And again, we had none related to federal programs conditions to report. You also received a separate letter which is standard communication with the board. This is, for the most part, boilerplate language. We did have a couple of recommendations that we included in here related to just the results of some of our procedures related to things such as activity funds and non-collusion affidavits, and that's just informational. We make a recommendation, and I believe Ms. Brandstetter has provided to you her response related to those particular items. So with that, that's my 22nd audit report lesson, and if I can answer questions, I will be happy
to. Tell us what you just said.
In English?
In English.
Everything went very well. The staff is very responsive. For a large district, this is a wonderful place to come because Diane provides all of what we need in a very timely manner. So I have nothing to report to you from a negative standpoint at all. And if I did, it would be in here. So.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Again, the board can choose to accept the audit this evening, or we can do it at the first meeting in February. Our time frame has to be done within 8 months of the end of the fiscal year. We're just 6 months out, so we've got a little time if you want to look at it, or if you want
I've had time to look at it. I would be happy to make a motion to approve these tonight.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Schutz?
Yes.
Again, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Diane, and the staff in the business office for an excellent job. Item 7B, I would ask you to acknowledge the written recommendation that I sent to you to terminate the employment of Carmen Judith Padilla as a special education teacher assistant, and I would ask you to accept my recommendation to set a hearing for February 21st, immediately following the regular board meeting that we will have that evening in this location for the purpose of hearing her appeal to that.
Move for approval. Second. Any questions or discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Dr. Schutz?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item 7C is an information item. As you know, we've been doing the budget updates. This evening, Mrs. Brandstetter will be visiting with you about our bond funds and our sales tax fund. You know, we've gone through the building fund, we've gone through the general fund. In her terms, we've done 11 and 21. Now we're going to do 31 and 41. But give you an update of where our bond collections are. And then when she completes, I want to just give you a little information about what the plans are for what information she gives you. So, Diane, go right ahead.
Okay, let's start with, actually we're going to start with our municipal fund, which is considered our city sales tax funds. They are on page 4 and 5 of the agenda. On page 4, it actually, you can see that we've broken down the city sales tax to the one line item, which is the buses, the part that was the buses, the $5 million for the buses, and then the $20 million that was to be for all the renovations in all the schools. You can see the balances and what we've expended in this current year on page 4. I went a little bit further for you and gave you a little bit more history on page 5, so that's the page that we're actually going to be looking at more in detail. You can see all the different schools that were part of the city sales tax. There are there were 4 of them that are highlighted there, and the reason that they are highlighted there are that as we went through doing the projects, some of the other projects ended up being a little bit greater than expected, so those 4 items were tabled, so there was not enough funds to continue on with those particular projects. I wanted to make note of those. Now, there are a few others that are actually going to be completed, and I think you'll find that further down in the consent agenda. Cleveland, Eisenhower Elementary, and Pioneer Park should also be completed. There's just a couple of things left on Lawton High and Sullivan Village, maybe a punch list or two, a few things here and there left on those schools, and for the most part we are completed. The only project that then will be continuing on will be Geronimo Road. It will be the final project that will continue on. You'll see at the top under district-wide, once we've adjusted the budgets as we've gone through the projects up or down depending upon the bids, you can see that the balance that's available for the district as the superintendent chooses or you all choose to spend the remaining portion of the money, there's $258,000. Wasn't going to be enough to do any one of those 4 highlighted projects, so it is sitting there for decisions to be made on that. Okay, let's move on to page 6 and 7, which is our bond fund. Again, page 6 will show you what the expenditures are for the current year, but on page 7 I went a little bit further and gave you a little bit more in-depth as to the entire bond project, the 10 years of the bond. In the middle of it you can see where the bond sales were. You can tell each year that we bought them. Okay, at the top it shows the different projects that we anticipated spending money. Each one of them did not have a specific amount of money that we were going to allocate for each one of them, so it's kind of been a moving target as we go, depending upon the need of the district and which items needed to be done at certain times. You can see what we've expended in each of the areas. For instance, the project number 175 under construction and renovations, you can see the total that we have expended to date is $26 million. Okay, you can kind of see over the 10-year period of time what we've done in the bond fund. At this point, we have $3.8 million still available for projects, for ongoing projects. Right now, we have working right now. We have the air conditioning at MacArthur High School and projects that are slated, and I think Mr. Beecham's probably going to address those a little bit further here when I'm finished. Right now, both of those funds seem to be working well. Everything's going pretty well, and I think, like I said, the municipal tax fund shortly here will only have the one school running through it, and then we'll do some other things as Mr. Beecham will continue on with. Any questions about the funds? Okay. Mr. Beecham.
And if I can jump in, let's go back, if we can, to the city sales tax. The 4 buildings that are not we've not done construction on. If you'll remember, 3 years ago we hired 3 different groups of architects. We hired a group to do the 6 that we just finished. We had a group to do the Fort Sill School, and then we hired another group to do the 4. We did, as we bid those out, of course we finalized with the Fort Sill Schools that we needed to combine that and use it as matching, so that's where $8 million went. Then we took the next 6 schools that had the greatest need and bid them, and they consumed the bulk of the remaining money. So we have plans for 4 schools, and as far as our growth in the future, if there's more money, we already have the plans drawn. We're ready to move forward with those, but we don't have the resources right now to do that. One of the things I would like to suggest to you, those 4 schools each have, actually there's 5 of them. If you'll look, Alma West is not highlighted. If you'll look across there, the cost was $347,000. That building was in dire need of a roof, and the way the sales tax was written, we could do construction and repair and remodeling. So we used it. We knew we couldn't build the 6 classrooms, but we could put the roof on it with that money. So we did do that there. At Adams, we're in dire need of trying to figure out a way to improve the traffic flow at the corner of 35th and Ferris. That's a nightmare for people trying to get to school right there, the way that school sets. So we're going to look at how we can do a drive, and maybe part of this $258,000 can go toward that's up there. At Eisenhower Middle School, we've got a horrendous situation on our road that we use for access there, and I'll be bringing to you a request to consider at the next board meeting to put some matching money out there. The Leadership Lawton is working on trying to match some money so that we can get that repair done, and that's where that money would come from, and that's a great expenditure for that those particular funds. Edison, in the meantime, their enrollment has stabilized and actually dropped off just a little bit. What they are lacking that they're in dire need of is a school with 400 with no PE facility over there. And we don't quite have enough money to address that, but I think that's one that when we do, we need to prioritize that, because they're using their auditorium as a cafegematorium, as we describe it. And when you got 400 kids and you're trying to do a cafegematorium, it's kind of wild and crazy, as I used to say years ago. And by the way, today was in 1968, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In started today. So it was a wild and crazy time. But Edison is needing a gymnasium, and it's a large school, and that's a facility that we need to keep in mind as we move down the road. On the bond money, which is back on the next two pages, at $3.8 million, we have MacArthur Middle School and Eisenhower Middle School. They're both, the specs have been drawn to do the air conditioning in both of those schools, and we will be putting those out for bid in the next couple of weeks. That's part of that 3.8. Both of those buildings have a portion that is air conditioned, but their original structures were not. We also have the Eisenhower High School auditorium that needs to be air conditioned. It was not in the original bid. We tried to get as many classrooms done before we did the ancillary areas. And we have the MacArthur auditorium and gymnasium that needs to be done. Then there are about 5 elementary schools, which are relatively small projects that we have been doing ourselves with the crew that we have that save us the labor factor on that, so our money goes even further. But we will have about 5 more elementary schools. We're going to be real close on getting there, but it should be just about on target to get that air conditioning completed. But I wanted you to know what's built into these. One thing I would share with you, up at in the lines where you're looking at the bond money, and it says security, and you look over there and it says 1.9 million. Security was everything from replacing doors, just worn out doors, to putting in metal detectors and camera systems and everything else in the world. I mean, we put locking door handles. We still have a few schools that do not have handle or classrooms where they lock without a key. And so we're working on how we can get that done within this bond structure as well. But all in all, the bond expenditures are pretty much on course. Unfortunately, when you stretch something out over 10 years, it's real difficult to estimate what the cost will be 10 years from now for steel or whatever. Some of those things just kicked us early on, but we're going to get really close to where we were trying to get to with that bond. And one of the things prior to my leaving that I will share with my successor is what I would be looking at to recommend to you in the future for the next projects coming up. And that's, I think, that'll always be your decision, but certainly something that they can at least have a starting point and go from there. I am also going to bring to you in the next couple of weeks another recommendation about another round of buses. Our collections are good in there. I want to see what we get in the February collection, which is actually the December sales tax, because that's always annually, obviously, a big month for us. And hopefully we will be able to not only continue to buy fleet buses like that, but we could buy a couple more of activity buses so that our buses are not running, our route buses are not running up and down the road, racking up miles, and we can have some specific buses for that. But I'll be bringing that to you in the next couple of weeks. But just wanted to give you a little brief overview of where we are with that money. And again, thank you, Diane, for the information. And I will be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Let's see where we are. Are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Schutz?
Yes. Okay, no need for executive session tonight.
And this evening,
Thank you. Superintendent's personnel report.
under item 13A, I would ask you to vote to approve the employing, promoting, disciplining, and receiving of resignations of individuals certified and support salary personnel as they are listed on pages 134 through 135.
Move for approval.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Dr. Schutz?
Yes. Consideration of any new business. Next board meeting dates, February 4th, 2013, here at Shoemaker Center. Any board announcements? Well, consider a motion to adjourn, please.
Move for approval.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Ms. John?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Schutz?
Yes.